do
I
another
like
one.
it. New York, kind of.
It's rough.
Hello, Beckley, how many do we have out there today?
All of us.
6, great. Did she give you all your grades on the test?
Yes, sir.
All right, we're going to review them. Yes.
Score a few minutes.
Give me just a second. Let me hand these tests out right now, and then we're going to review them quick, and then we'll start back into our notes. Where's Mr. Ayers?
Shut up.
Do you think you should have your name legally changed?
For whatever reason, Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Ayers, I want to
No, it ain't wrong.
see your faces. I'm having such a hard time. That's awful.
You got HIV, that's my name.
Have an extended middle name.
You know we love it, man. We wouldn't make it.
Yes, sir.
I told you, you're my
Yeah, we
favorite.
talk shit about you like you relevant if we didn't like you.
This is like, say, you know the office. You know him?
You and I, we're going to spend some time, a lot of time between now and the end of school, because we've got to do some things.
I gotta make it one of those.
Morning graphic. Yeah. Get that.
Look, grab it.
Nah, not this one. I'm gonna search that on library and see what comes up.
I haven't
Great.
yet.
All good stuff.
Everybody? All right. Some of us struggle with this test, and others of us did really, really well. I don't pretend to know, except I'm concerned, maybe that Beckley, the results were the same as Beckley as they were here. Some of us did really, really well. Some of us struggled a little bit. I'm a little concerned with what's going on. I'm evaluating my processes. I want to make sure that I'm doing the things that I need to be doing. But we're going to work on it. We're going to make sure we get there. We're going to make sure we get the information covered. I'm not sure that everybody was very fired up about the last 2 weeks topic right there, spring break, but we worked through it, and now we're into counterterrorism, which I hope is going to be much more interesting. I got a bunch more feedback with that, so I'm hoping that our grades are going to improve then. But I am looking at my processes, because anytime we have several students, it causes me to look at what I'm doing and make sure that I'm doing what I need to be doing for you all. So I am evaluating it. We are going to get there, but I need you all to keep up your part and keep taking your notes and keep doing the work and studying for these tests. Sometimes
Take 2 steps backwards.
do what?
2 steps backwards.
All right. Sometimes I think I'm gonna move the microphone so I don't have to step backwards. Sometimes I think that because in a lot of the other classes I give tests that's got 40 or 50 questions, and in this classroom, for every couple of weeks, I give a test that's got 23, 24, 25 questions. That makes each question worth 4 or 5 points, where in the other tests they're only worth, 1, 2, 3. And I think when you miss a question on these tests, it affects you much more adversely than it does on a 50 or 60 question test. And I think it has something to do with it too. So I may try to get some more questions for this next test and see what our scores look like. But I am evaluating what we're doing. But I need you all to keep up your part, keep up the notes, and keep working. We're going to get there. Nobody's really in danger of failing. If you are, you'll get an email from me, and we'll come up with some sort of plan of action to keep, to engage you, to keep that from happening. So, decisions by the police. Number 1, decisions by the police to stop and encounter citizens are directed by. Oh, Mr. Reedy, get your test right here. The answer is D. Both A and B. Personal attitudes and situational attitudes. Number 2, the United States Supreme Court of what allows police officers to use past experience when making decisions about suspicious behavior? A. Terry versus Ohio. Good. The Wilson study states that the department an officer works for can influence decision-making. True or false?
True.
A, true. The legalistic departments tend to make arrests for minor violations blank than service departments. Is it about the same, more than, less than, or none of the above? More than. Service-style police departments focus more on what? B, servicing the community. Number 6, racial profiling at the department level can occur through what? A, deployment. Remember, we talked about that a lot, and I told you that racial profiling doesn't necessarily have to happen on the officer level. The officer can be trying to do what they do. But if the department sends 10 officers per shift into an African-American neighborhood and 4 officers a shift into a white neighborhood, which neighborhood is going to get more arrests out of it? The African-American neighborhood, right? Because there's more officers there. Not necessarily because there's more crime, but just because there's more officers, right? So it can skew your data. It can make it look like an African-American neighborhood may have a higher crime rate, and when actually it's because you have a larger police presence. All right, number 7, racial profiling. Racial profiling cannot happen at the department level without racial profiling by an individual officer. I just answered that. What's the answer?
False.
False. All of these are considered extra legal factors in a racial profiling stop except time of day. Rawls' 2000 study shows that divergence can occur between racial groups even minor issues such as communication. True or false? What does that mean? What does that mean, everybody? Such things can happen. Divergence can happen even with something simple like communication. What does that mean? Misunderstandings, misrepresentations, confusion. Now, I lost my place. What question were we on? 10. Good. Thank you all. Nonverbal communication such as lack of eye contact, poor posture, nervousness, and being fidgety can be identified as suspicious behavior in a stop. True or false?
True.
True. Not to single anybody out, but I just happened to think about this because I remember the notes that Mr. Crane and Beckley, are you there?
Yeah, here.
I love the notes that you put on the test. It really gives me an opportunity to look at where you're at. I like the notes that you put on there. I think your thought process is good. Me and you, we just got to work on our communication, get you where you need to be. But I really like those notes you put on there, and I appreciate it. It gives me a clue as to what I'm doing as I'm teaching and how I can teach better and present the material better. So I just wanted, as I read this question, I remembered your note, and I wanted to tell you thank you. But remember, even though those might be signs of somebody being nervous or upset, the piece that I wanted you to get out of that is that an officer can look at that as a guilty conscience, right? Suspicious behavior. Be aware of those things. Number 11, police training and experience are used as the basis for evaluating what? C, suspicious behavior. Number 12, empirically. Now that means in a perfect world. Remember I told you all that? Imperial data means in a perfect world. Or imperial situation means in a perfect world, police suspicion should be based on all but which of the following? D, the religion of the suspect. 13, the definition of racial profiling is any police action based on race, ethnicity, national origin, rather than behavior or information received. True or false?
True.
Very true. Thank you. There is no connection between race, bias stops, and animosity. Whew, I almost didn't get that out. Toward police by the public.
False.
It's false. There is a lot of animosity in that situation. High levels of discretion means that the officer is relying on his or her experience from the field. True or false? True. Low levels of discretion means he's using what? Prior knowledge, observation, and and a little bit of past experience, but prior knowledge and observation, right? Working more off the facts. What question are we on? I lost it again. 16, thank you. I'm glad y'all are with it today. I'm not. The early solution to racial profiling is? Data collection. C. Now, these others, you can use that as a early intervention, but none of them are going to be effective. Data collection is the effective tool for early intervention in racial profiling. Data collection on all stops, Terry and other stops, is a form of B, intelligence-led policing. Number 17 is B, intelligence-led policing. Did you get it right and I mark it wrong?
Yeah.
Okay, make me a note. I try not to make no mistakes, but occasionally I do. I made one last night, but I got it fixed. Data collection will help what? C. No, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm crazy. D. Create appropriate enforcement strategies. D. 19. Data on all stops can serve as early warning for police misconduct. True or false? True. There are 7 difficulties in data collection. True or false? All but which of the following are difficulties in data collection? A. Officer shortage was not one of the difficulties listed. Cultural diversity includes all but which of the following? I move this chair, I'm trying to kick it. Race, sexual orientation, national origin, or D, none of the above? None of the above. 23. Suspicion of a person is what by the officer's interest in that person or the vehicle? Measured. C. And the 7 bonus questions is cost, officer resistance, officer disengagement, inaccurate data, use of the data, and racial designation. I was pretty liberal with them. I accepted quality. I accepted a lot of them. I tried to give you points wherever I could give you points. I was pretty liberal in what I accepted to give you bonus points. If I made a mistake, Beckley, send me an email with the questions that I may have marked.
We just have a paper that has our grade on it. We don't have our actual test.
All right. Next test, I will make the correction on that, okay?
Uh-huh.
I don't know why we're not doing that, but I will make the correction next test. I now have a scanner in my office so I can actually scan those tests and send them back to her so that you can actually have a hard copy, okay?
Okay.
They gave me a scanner while we were off for spring break, so this will give me an opportunity to use it. All right, I'm going to take these tests back up. We're going to jump into the notes. Last thing you will do, see my arm here, right? All right. What we did when we left off with class the other day is we're going to talk about counterterrorism. But before we could jump into counterterrorism, I wanted to back up and spend Tuesday talking about what terrorism was. So we kind of got a definition of terrorism, and we kind of got a little bit of a definition of insurgency, and we talked a little bit about guerrilla warfare, and we kind of got a basis for what we're getting ready to talk about as we go through the next couple of class meetings so that we have something to get started on. So I want to begin today by talking about the NCTC, the National Center No, the National Counterterrorism Center. NCTC. Can y'all hear me all right, Beckley?
Yes.
Okay, good.
What did you say that stood for?
NCTC is the National Counterterrorism Center. Now, here's what you have to understand, and this is why that I spend so much time in all of my other classes whenever this comes up and we start talking about it, and we start talking about 9/11. And I tell you that 9/11 was the day when policing changed for forever. Because it fundamentally changed on so many levels. Before 9/11, we had so many silos in our federal government. Now, we're going to switch gears a little bit. Y'all know how I like to talk about local police and state police, and that's kind of where we're at. In the next couple of classes in here, we're going to talk about the federal government. Now, if you think that local and state police departments were silos, you ain't seen nothing to what the federal government was before 9/11. Everything they did was a silo. Everything that went on was, every department was its own silo. Everything that went on was a turf war. And every department was jealous of every other department. And there was a lot of stress and strife between the federal agencies because basically they were all competing for a limited amount of federal dollars. And if they could take credit for this major coup de grace or that major coup de grace, they got more money and could do more things, and so everything was a competition. Money was definitely finite. And everything was a competition to get those dollars. So every department was a silo. And when they began to review what happened on 9/11, a very clear picture came out. And that very clear picture was that the CIA had a little bit of the information that would have prevented 9/11 from happening. They had a little piece of the puzzle. The FBI had a little different piece of the puzzle that could have stopped 9/11 from ever happening. The Secret Service had a little bit of the puzzle that could have stopped it from happening. The Department of Defense had a little piece of the puzzle that probably could have stopped it from happening. The DOJ had some information that probably could have helped prevent that stuff. But because they were all silos, nobody was talking. Nobody was sharing intel. Nobody was sharing information. And when it all happened, the CIA said it's the FBI's fault. And the FBI said it's got to be the CIA's fault. And the Secret Service said, we're out. It's both y'all's fault. And so they began to blame one another. But the truth of the matter is, in a big after-action committee meeting that they had, what they discovered was that because of the nature of federal criminal justice, these agencies weren't talking. They were jealous of each other. And had they been talking all along and sharing data and sharing information, there would have been a big, clear picture of what was about to happen. And we could have done something to have prevented 9/11 from happening completely. But because there wasn't anything, 9/11 happened, and law enforcement changed forever. The job that I did prior to 9/11 is not going to be the same as the job that you all are going to do in the very near future when you graduate and go out into the street. It's fundamentally changed, and what fundamentally changed it was 9/11. Now, in response to that, the federal government created the National Center for the National Counterterrorism Center. I keep wanting to call it the National Center of something, and I don't know why. I've been looking at these notes for 3 days, and I still want to call it the National Center of something. It's not. It's National Counterterrorism Center. Now, the National Counterterrorism Center is a partnership between the CIA, the FBI, the DOJ, the DOD, and HS. Tell me what all of those abbreviations mean. I like it. Department of Justice is one.
Central Intelligence Agency.
CIA. Federal Bureau of Investigation. DOD is who?
Department of Defense.
Good. And what's HS?
Homeland Security.
So they are all partners in this National Counterterrorism Center. and they all share resources. In other words, all of these major groups have skin in this game. They all have employees who work there. They all have money that's invested there. They all have something to gain or lose from this center. Okay? And this center has a clearly listed set of responsibilities and jobs. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. They identify known terrorists and possible terrorists. They have an identity department where their job is to identify known terrorists and possible terrorists. That's why when you saw the dude wearing the mask for ISIL and cutting off the people's heads, you know, in the videos, that's how we were able to identify him within about 3 or 4 months instead of 4 or 5 years. You got to tell me there ain't some technology going on when you are analyzing, you know who this guy is in about 3 months, and you can't see nothing but his eyes and hear his voice. There's some technology going on right there. They knew who he was, and they started cross-referencing him with people they already had, right? And they narrowed it down, and in about 3 months, they knew who he was. If we didn't have this in place, it would have took years to figure out who that guy was. Consequently, he's dead now. He won't be cutting off anybody else's head. He's gone. They identify and categorize terrorist groups. They identify and categorize terrorist groups.
That's number 2.
Number 2. Yes, they identify and categorize terrorist groups. ISIL is the one that everybody's talking about now. Number 3, they identify and disseminate the information about these groups' capabilities. They identify and disseminate the information about these terrorist groups' capabilities. In other words, what are their resources? What is their manpower situation? What do they have the ability to do, and what can they probably not do? Right now, they're telling us, in spite of what North Korea says, that North Korea does not have a nuclear weapon, and they are not capable of firing said nuclear weapon on a missile anywhere, not even South Korea. That's what they're telling us now. That's what their data is. So that's part of what they do. They identify these terrorist groups, and then they talk about their capabilities. They identify, yes, they can do what they're threatening to do, or no, we don't think they can do what they're threatening to do. Do they have the money? Do they have the resources? Do they have the capability? The next. They identify plans and ideologies. They identify specific terrorist plots and group ideologies. And the last one, they identify emerging threats both home and abroad. Emerging, which is new. Emerging threats is another way of saying new, recent. Yes? First one was they identify specific terrorists. So what I want to add into that is this. From a local law enforcement standpoint, from a state police standpoint, and maybe from a federal government standpoint, homegrown terrorists are much, much more frightening than ISIL. because we know less about them, we have less history with them, they're much harder to identify, they're much more secretive, and they can inflict a great deal of damage. One of the last homegrown terrorists that we had, they were very successful with what they were trying to do. They really stirred up the conversation about Muslim Americans, and that was the two in California, San Bernardino. Thank you. I was going to say Oakland, but I knew that wasn't right. San Bernardino, California, were kind of our homegrown terrorists. They are by far the most dangerous. Now, the National Counterterrorism Center has a much bigger operations that they oversee. Those five that I listed to you are their broad job, their broad interests, the broad responsibilities. Particular things that they oversee is much more detailed, and the list is a little bit bigger. They analyze terrorism data. This is more specific, if you will. They analyze terrorism data. They identify assets and operations. Now, this is the part that I think is absolutely the most interesting. This National Counterterrorism Center, through several different avenues of collecting this data, can now tell you where almost every dollar that ISIL gets comes from. They know exactly what's going on. They know exactly how ISIL is collecting their money. Down to that ISIL goes into a major community and extorts the citizens of that community for 60% of everything they own, about 3 times a year. I think that's amazing. In response to how ISIL is making their money, what did we do to put a chink in that and to make ISIL, in effect, broke? Do y'all know? It was just in the news the other day. We did it about 6 months ago, but it's just starting to trickle out. No? Oh, I love this. I finally got one on all of you. Right. All right. So here's what happened. ISIL had about 4 major oil tankers. And they were filling those oil tankers with oil and selling them on the black market regularly for millions of dollars. The United States identified the whales, they identified the tankers, and they identified the people who was buying the oil. They went in. They couldn't do much with the whales. The whales were kind of in occupied territory. They went into the people who was buying the oil, shut them down. Then they sank all of the tankers while they were empty. They are now at the bottom of the ocean. ISIL has no more ability to sell no more oil. I heard in the news just last night that because ISIL's ability to sell oil and finance their soldiers had gone down, they had cut their soldiers' pay by 2/3. And they were expecting the recruitment to drop drastically because there was no more money in it. It was not lucrative anymore. And this all comes from the NCTC being able to identify the assets of a terrorist organization, and once you identify those, you eliminate them. I think it's pretty interesting. It's neat, actually. Attack from, who would have thought about it? If you cut the money out, life gets hard. But that's what the Americans have done. They sank all of those oil tankers, and now ISIS has. They went from 100 million a month down to 10 or 15 million a month, which is basically what they can extort or drive, what oil they can drive in tractor trailers to sell. The tankers are out. They keep up with warnings and advisories. Warnings and advisories are really interesting to me. What are the codes that we use in this country? No, not not DEFCON, what is it we use for terrorist activity? It's green, yellow, orange, and red.
And then one final.
I thought red was the final. Is there one other than red?
Blue is in there somewhere.
Okay. I wasn't sure. Y'all got me on that one. I know that they are responsible for recommending to the president what level, terrorist threat level we're at. Or it's actually not the president, it's the chief of Homeland Security is the person who does that. But he's in direct conference with the president when he makes that decision. So basically that's how it operates. They also do travel advisories. How many of y'all have seen the travel advisories for other countries? How many of y'all are aware that they put out those travel advisories? They do. When it's not particularly safe to travel to another country, they put out that travel advisory and you can read it. Most of us choose to ignore it because we live with our head in the sand. But before you travel abroad, I strongly recommend you go on there and read their travel warnings. They can be very, very helpful. They analyze they analyze the intelligence. They collect the terrorist information. They analyze the terrorist information. They maintain an updated terrorist list. They made an updated terrorist list. They maintain an operational center for counterterrorism operations. They maintain a counterterrorism center for counterterrorism operations. So that means that a counterterrorist operation could be going on in a particular place, and the team may be made up of any number of different individuals. It may be some military, it may be some CIA, it may be some special forces, it might be some FBI. You don't know who's going to be on that team. They will select their team members from the different departments based on particular skill sets that they think they're going to need to accomplish that goal. Right? And they mash those people together in a team and send them in. They operate a secure website. They operate a secure website for intelligence dissemination to those who need to know. Remember, I've preached and preached and preached to you all in different classes. Police work, especially on an international level like this, is really about the exchange of real-time information. That intelligence has to be accessible to the folks in the field, and it has to be accessible around the world, wherever these folks are. So it is a secure website with that intelligence on it, which makes me wonder if the Chinese think they can get into it. You know, they've got into almost the Chinese have gotten on into almost every other government website. I wonder if they can get into that. Concentrates on improved information sharing. They concentrate on improved information sharing. And that's with the feds, the state, the local, and international. I'll give you a prime example of two countries right now that have been struggling over the course of the last 6 or 7 months because they don't have the infrastructure, the information sharing, the networking that we've got in this country. France and Belgium. They are discovering now that they need what we have because they don't have the ability to track the known terrorists that move through France and through Belgium, and they have allowed them to actually set up and have complete communities where these people operate with impunity. They don't even worry about getting caught until recently. It took them over 4 months to catch the last France bomber who was just a few miles away in Belgium. They couldn't figure out where he was at, they couldn't catch him. They need the infrastructure that we have on information sharing and dissemination. They develop and measure effectiveness of strategies. They develop and measure the effectiveness of strategies. What does that make them? Because they are evaluating their strategies. What is that? It's a scientific process. So what can we categorize their efforts as? Is it intelligence-led policing?
Yes.
Absolutely. They assign roles and responsibilities to different agencies. They have some authority. They assign roles and responsibilities to different agencies. Based on what information I can gather, and they're not telling you everything, they keep a lot of the stuff secret, but based on what I can gather right now, there are over 104 active joint task force operations going on right now. Over 104 going on right now. They include such things as military operations support, correctional intelligence intervention. Why would we do that? Why would you focus on correctional intelligence intervention?
Gangs,
Yes, go even deeper.
gangs that have ties with terrorist groups.
They have found that a lot of homegrown terrorists are becoming radicalized in prison, especially federal prisons. Because whether you believe it or not, whether you like it or not, you can't deny someone their religious beliefs while they're in prison. So every Friday in prison, we had 2 different Muslim services. You had the Sunni service, and then you had just the regular Muslim service. The best I can tell you is the Sunnis are more fundamentalists. They're very fundamentalist Islam, and the others are not. They're kind of a more liberal, more not as fundamentalist. They let a little more stuff go on in theirs. But in those services, they are finding, especially in federal prison, that people are becoming radicalized, and they are identifying people in those services. The largest operation that they have ongoing right now is called Operation Tripwire. Tripwire. Yes. TRIPWIRE, Operation Tripwire. Operation Tripwire is intelligence gathering and sharing. That's all intelligence Operation Tripwire does. Gathers intel, turns it into data, and shares it. Another large one that they have that nobody talks much about is the Rail Liaison Project. Why would that be important? Rail? What is rail? Train and public transit. Because what was one of the targets in Belgium?
Subway.
Public transit, right? Their rail system, their public trains inflict huge casualties. Now, the NCTC has a smaller field office. The Crmj, NCTC, they have a smaller field office they call a strategic ops center. They have them all over the world. Strategic ops centers. They are global command centers. They are manned and operated around the clock. They operate in support of various operations of many different sizes. So these operation centers are all over the world. They're global in command. They operate 24/7. They support multiple ops of various sizes. And how do they support them? They supply them with technology. And information management. What do you mean technology? What am I talking about when I say they supply them with technology? Can be, I'm thinking a little more along the lines of field operations.
Hardware.
Yeah, more hardware. What, like what? They listed on the notes that I have, they listed things like satellite phones, cell phones, secured landlines, satellite imagery, infrared imagery.
Where's their main center at?
They won't tell you.
Okay.
I've looked and looked and looked to try to get a state, an address, whatever. They don't tell you that. These operation centers all have one thing in common. They sustain an uninterrupted power supply. Why is that important?
Power grid gets knocked out.
Power goes off, technology is useless, right? So they have the ability to have an uninterrupted power supply. Regardless of what goes on, these folks are still working. Now, these strategic ops centers, they focus on some things. They focus on our borders and our ports. One of the biggest weak points we've got in our national security is our ports. There's no way as many of those big metal containers that comes into this country on a daily basis as comes in They can all be inspected, there's no way. It's not gonna happen.
It's far less than 1%. That's all.
Yeah. I mean, they're lucky to get 1%. Yeah, that would be most of the stuff comes in is never inspected, it's never checked. It comes right on in. That is a very vital weak point. If they were gonna move, stuff into this country through our ports would be the way to do it because we're weak there. We don't have the manpower to make those ports secure and to be able to search those containers that come in here. We just don't have the manpower for it. They focus on, y'all like this one, they focus on colleges and universities. That ought to make you feel safe and secure. Big Brother is watching. They're particularly watching you while you're in college. Why? College is a transitional time for most people, right? College is an opportunity for somebody who is trying to learn something new, who can be influenced. It's an opportunity to be radicalized. So they watch. They focus on our food supply. U.S. Department of Agriculture is weak. I'll tell you. They're almost as weak as the FDA. Sad. Offend them, do you?
No,
Okay.
trust me, if you work at Sam's, you.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah. The U.S. Department of Agriculture is weak. I hope they've got somebody watching them because they don't do a very good job. They're kind of like the Food and Drug Administration. They're both very reactive, not very proactive, and that's what makes them weak, in my opinion.
You say food supply, are you referring to water too, or strictly?
According to what I can see here, it's just food. The food supply, the food chain. They didn't mention water in here at all, which I think is a huge mistake on their part. Because I agree with you. I think water. I told you in our Tuesday class, I think our water supply all over this country is vulnerable. And there's no oversight. And if you don't believe me that there ain't no oversight, just ask the people in Flint, Michigan. There is no oversight. They focus on human rights. Huh?
Why exactly?
The best that I can explain to you is that there is a direct correlation between human rights violation and terrorist organizations. You will find that most terrorist organizations have a history of human rights violations, and they kind of go hand in hand in a law. Where there's smoke, there's fire, I guess. I like this one. I found this one to be rather interesting. Special events. This is how they titled it, special events. But then down underneath, they listed what the special events were. Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, Super Bowl, National Championship Game, NBA Finals. I bet it is too. They didn't have it on there, but I bet the marathon's on there too. But New Year's Eve, we talked about New Year's Eve on Tuesday. New Year's Eve is on there, Times Square. They have all of those things on their special events that they now focus on, that they're operating behind the scenes that you may never see, but they're there. They also focus on the traveling public, both domestic and abroad. I have a nephew that I'm very proud of who's getting ready to graduate from college, and he is going to go spend 2 years, and he didn't tell me what country, but he's getting ready to go spend 2 years on the continent of Africa teaching math. He's going to graduate in May, and I think he's going to leave in June or July. He'll be back in 2 years. He's going to stay on the continent of Africa teaching math with Peace Corps. He's going with Peace Corps. I don't know. He told me what country they're going to, and I don't remember. But I'm quite concerned. because, there are some places in Africa that aren't safe. And so he's going to do that with Peace Corps, and hopefully the Peace Corps will keep him safe. But the good part about that is that the Peace Corps has a pretty good working relationship with our federal government, and so hopefully they'll be able to be aware of the Americans that are there and work on keeping them safe. And they also concentrate, now I like this too, I like that they got this support. This really kind of bolstered this, that they got this behind the scenes support. They also concentrate on U.S. troops overseas. Our U.S. military overseas is getting counterterrorism support, which is good. We don't need our folks over there being victims of some type of terrorist attack. So, that is where I want to break off today and leave you. Y'all have taken a ton of notes. I've given you all the information. And this room's about 9,000 degrees, so I'm sure you all know that. Victor, you all have a great weekend. We'll get there. Y'all keep working with me. I appreciate it. Have a great weekend. See you Tuesday. Dang, he must have been watching. He killed that right at the minute.
I hope you're done. See you later. Bye.
Yeah, bye. Come see me.
Yeah, I'll do all this.
Yeah, let's do it all together.
So I have an issue with my dog. She's 4. She loves other dogs. And she wants to play. And owners think she's weird. We ran into
What time should I meet you in the office?
Let's give me time to go get some lunch. Let's speak about lunch, all right?
Yeah.
I'm a fat boy. I'm starving to death. I gotta have something to eat.
Alright.
I can't meet you back over there without going to get some lunch. I
And this lady, and as soon as she gets here, went off.
So you can do that. I'm on If I hadn't eaten breakfast, I would have been a sugar coma now, y'all. Trying to get me some glucose.
Somehow and teach her.
All right, I'll see you once.
Well, I need to teach her how to.
Give me 5 liquids, sure will.
It's tough. All flesh.
That's what happens when you go into a
They
coma.
got 4 dogs. That's how they play. They run up to each other,
Oh.
Yeah.
No, you ain't gotta worry about that. Let me tell you
This
something.
dog and this dog was just like
I'm so
wrapping the
unlucky
leash
that if
around
I
the
tried
dog.
heroin, it would kill me right off
I'm
the
like,
jump.
Mary, stop, stop. And then the owner went, eek. Made it worse. Yeah, I gotta go pay bills.
Well, you were here Tuesday, right?
Yes.
Do you have some notes you can help him with
Yeah.
for Tuesday? She takes excellent notes. She does a better job giving it to you than I can.
I think that handout what you do,
Good.
300 to 308 is due Tuesday.
You got a phone, you can take a picture of her notes?
You take a picture. Doing 2 conversations.
I heard that meeting on Saturday, then I'm well on Sunday.
I was like, boss, I'm slammed.
Y'all still playing ball?
Yeah, we'll play till,
Are you winning?
no, we lost.
Who's playing?
8-0.
Oh, that's pretty close.
Yeah, it's close. It's awful weather, awful weather.
Did you, you were offensive lineman, you said?
Yep. Play them down. A little bit defense here and there.
You like just to put a suit on and whack 'em?
Yeah.
Those things are not blowing cold air. I can't tell you.
Oh, it's
Are they
900
on
degrees in
cool
this
or on
room.
they on
Problem
freeze?
is that the heat's still on.
They've gotta do something.
Problem, the heat's still on.
We got roasted last night over in Water.
Yeah, he told Alex. I know, I had that one window open and breeze was coming through, it was still warm.
I picked up a hell of a breeze.
Did it whack you? Lay on you, what?
No, I don't know how or when I got it.
Do y'all do,
No, I did lose my helmet though, and then someone headbutted me, that sucked ass.
oh, that is nice.
Oh, yeah.
That's a
Do you,
hard hit.
do y'all do a lot of passing or a lot of running?
Scoring straight.
I always never did like when they spread and you were on the line.
That's a lot of retreat. And it is, I mean, your first step's gotta be back. All right, sir, you doing well, you ready?
Yep, I'm good, check a couple things.
had my second interview on the 18th.
Also, the person's already happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That went well.
It must have been, like I was saying, yeah. Yeah, I understand they interviewed 5 people, and, I don't know if anybody else, they haven't told me anybody else got a second. I'm the first one, it's my understanding, I know one got a second, so. That's a positive sign.
18th of April.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to do a 20-minute teaching demonstration. No, just strictly, there'll be the interview panel and, provost and the dean. I'm not gonna do anything different than I do in class, I mean, it's about engaging, it's about keeping it interesting, keeping the energy level up,
Yeah.
pushing the information.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. Just do what you always do.
Well, I gotta get me some lunch. I hate to leave you standing in here.
Man,